Well, I never thought I would see the day I would hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I know I said I'd play through Skyrim as a Titan. However, I ran into quite a few issues with that I'm still working out. So instead, since Fallout is in the air, today we will replicate another run from Skyrim, as today we will attempt to beat Fallout 4 as an ant, or as small as possible. Oh boy, another miserable experience for me, I bet. So as for the rules for the run, I have to play through the entire game at a 0.1 scale, or otherwise use the console command player.setScale 0.1 for the entire run, and if I have to grow up for any reason to get past obstacles, then the run is failed. As for when the game makes me size up because of cutscenes and such, well, we'll get to that later. Otherwise for the run, I'm allowed to use any weapons, and I can't use any companions unless they are required for a quest, and no major glitches, though there really aren't any major ones left besides mod swapping I can do anymore. Nothing really else for the rules and such. With that out of the way, let's get started on this misery. So when creating my character, I didn't feel like spending time making a character because things will be dragged to a crawl almost immediately, so instead I just went with the default option. As soon as I got control, which is pretty fast compared to Skyrim, I dropped my character size down to the minimum, and yeah, we are moving at a snail's pace. I wish my apartment was this big and not a broom closet. So when it comes to picking my special stats, besides I'm in the mood to play Pokemon lately, I went with the more general build. Strength would be useless for me for melee combat, but there is a perk I do want to work for later. Perception for Refractor, and more or less your run-of-the-mill special stats I tend to go for runs. Once that was done, I slowly crawled my way to Sean, who was probably twice the size of me, and I was able to play with him somehow. Truth be told, I was worried I wouldn't be able to interact with the crib, and the run would fail before it began, but I can proceed. Eventually, I was led outside, and I watched as the world begins to blink in and out of existence, and that is going to be the story for the entire run. And yeah, I am running super slow. Throughout this entire running section, I was very concerned I would be too slow and the nuke would detonate early, but thankfully that was not the case and I could descend into the vault to have a door get closed on my head, and watch poorly my wife getting shot dead. Hey, that rhymed. So, when I emerged from the cryopod, I am of an almost normal size, so I guess the run is filled before things really get started, but since I wanted to suffer, I reset my size to small and began to escape out of the vault. This escape section is interesting. So, funny thing about creation engine games, your character size affects your running speed and also melee damage. As for the first rad roach, yeah, I think melee build is impossible even with the Yao-Guairos, so I'm going to have to damage boost my way out of the vault. I can't grab the baton because I am too small to see it. I am at the very least lucky roaches cannot open doors. In the generator room, I tried to damage boost my way past the roaches, but I'm taking too much damage and they were blocking me, so I could not get on through until I was next to dead. And there were 2 more roaches ahead of me to seal my fate. Next go around, I decided to play things smart. By smart, I mean playing around live wires. I really questioned my sanity. It gets results and the roaches were shocked to death. Next room, I led the roaches out of the door and closed it on them so I could get on through and also drink some water, healing myself up to full. And I get a pistol in the next room which is not affected by my size. So the next hurdle, I am too small to use terminals, so I have to blindly guess the menus using audio cues. It gives results and I can get further inside. So before getting out of the vault, I have to contend with a lot of roaches, and I could shoot at their heads for a 1 to 2 shot, so the rest of the vault isn't a total nightmare at least. Also, big point of comparison to Skyrim's Ant Run, my attacks don't clip in the ground, so already a much more bearable run. As for the Pip-Boy, I thought I would have to wear the Pip-Boy as a shell, but thankfully it has shrinking technology to conform to my size. Eventually, before too long, I am out of the vault and back on the overworld. Only took 30 minutes versus Skyrim's hour. Already a much better run. So first things first, as to not bore you on the details of me getting scrappy in Sanctuary, some blowflies somehow taking out half of my health. I do craft quite a few fence posts hit level 2 for the Idiot Savant perk as usual. It describes me to a T, hence why I'm doing this challenge. I make it to the red rocket, and the jacket I found became pretty hilarious all things considered. While I was at the truck stop, I was jumped by an army of angry mole rats. Frankly, it scared the living hell out of me. At this point, I decided why not, I could help Preston out with his radar problem today, even if I wasn't going to side with the Minutemen this playthrough. When I got to Concord, he had already cleared out everyone in town. I guess that is the result of moving at a snail's pace. I did want the laser musket because for my grand plan it will help out quite a bit, and I also love energy weapons as they are. So unlike Skyrim's run, things aren't quite as dangerous for me, as while the raiders were shooting at me, they were having a hard time hitting me because of my hitbox might as well be a pixel to them, plus they are pretty far away also. One raider tried to burn herself alive also. While I was here, I grabbed the fusion core, and the rest of the place plays out as it normally would for a playthrough, just taking twice as long. Eventually I talked to Preston, grabbed a perception bobblehead, and climbed to the roof. So it was nice that the power armor conformed to my small size, and I can also rip off the minigun with ease. Yeah, the town was not happy with my weaponry blinking in and out of existence. That, and I was also turning red quickly. Eventually, the angry iguana came out of the sewers and wanted to tussle, and tussle it did. Had to use up quite a few of my healing supplies, but with probably 1,000 bullets in its body, the lizard goes down. When I went to leave the power armor, the game sets me to regular size, so I have to reshrink, so I guess the run would fail there, so instead I reloaded right before getting the power armor. Second go around, things were more interesting. Well, besides having to slowly carve my way through town again, when the Deathclaw appeared, I was out of his visions and I was able to crouch and sneak my way back towards the museum, and when I was close enough I aggroed the Deathclaw and ducked inside. Here I stayed out of slapping distance as I used up a good amount of my junk ammo. Meanwhile, Preston gave it a few tickles in the back. Used up quite a good chunk of my weaponry, but eventually the salamander goes down for another nap. Back inside the museum, I had a hell of a time leaving the place because I was last in line, but I was able to return to the sanctuary. Preston asked me to do settlement quest. I lied to him. Hell no, I'm not going to suffer through settlement quest again, but at least I got some essential experience in the process, since I'm going to need a lot of experience for the run. I actually can't beat the game with a Minuteman because I have to swim through the ocean to get into the Institute, and given my small stature, that is something I probably cannot do. Oh well, back in Concord I walked down the road a bit until I got to the diner. Wolfgang wanted nothing to do with me and booked it out of there, but swift wasteland justice put them down. After that was done, I continued to hike my way down the road past the Corvega assembly plant since I'm not allowing myself to use power armor for the run, plus no Minutemen thing. I decided to help the Brotherhood with their plights. However, dummy me decided to walk right into downtown where all the feral ghouls are, and I suck at CQC. I used up quite a few of my healing supplies, just trying to get my bearings straight. Eventually, I am able to make it to dance and we cleared out the hordes of ghouls. By we, it was more dance doing all the heavy work while I struggled with my crap aim. It was pretty easy experience and I wanted some supplies, and while we were talking, a car decided to blow itself up to add tension to the conversation. Once I was done at the police station, I wandered around for a bit walking towards Suggs because he can be pretty overpowered. Today he wasn't feeling up to it. And also today I had my eyes on another Creation Club weapon added in the recent patch. After this, there really wasn't much going on as I wandered towards the Diamond City, marking a few locations for later. Before Diamond City, the guards had a shootout with some super mutants and one of the guards did not make it, so I stole his armor. Pretty considerable upgrade at this point. At the gates of Diamond City, I bashed Piper for -1 damage to let me in, since I'm going to need some more supplies for my dumb idea that will help out quite a bit and also hurt immensely. Once I was happy, I left town to head to Goodneighbor. On my way there, I had a fun little shootout with a legendary super mutant at Trinity Tower. Sure, he could have probably cleared the tower, but I didn't feel like doing it today. I hit up a couple more locations for later like Park Street Station and entered the better town for the people. I wanted to get a fancy headshot on Finn, but it seems I was 1 damage point too low and failed, so we had a shootout in town. No idea why nobody tried to step in, but oh well. I was here because I wanted Cleo's Fat Man and mini nuke since I'm going to need one for an upcoming fight. So with my dumb arse all ready as I can be, I thought sure, why not, let's go to the Glowing Sea at level 7. I left from south of Diamond City and wandered my way towards Somerville Place. Despite the area being considered very dangerous on the heat map, it was a pretty danger-free jaunt towards the destination. I wanted to do the best of 3 quest. On my way there, I thought I could swim through water, but my ant issues from Skyrim rear its ugly head, and I'm swept away in the current. Thankfully I saved next to a bridge, so I decided to cross there, except I had to contend with a few super mutants, along with the scavenger. So near Somerville Place, there is a dead gunner with the Creation Club specialty of notes to follow. Here I followed the route east into the edge of the Glowing Sea. I think because of my small size, the radiation doesn't start affecting me until much deeper in, which helps out because of my speed issue. Not really much to contend with, it was a pretty peaceful jog into the Glowing Sea, just trying to avoid some stingwings as I crawled my way towards the church. I like the church here casually, bring in a full suit of power armor and crush all the ghouls inside in one fell swoop. But today I don't have that luxury. Instead I used a couple of grenades I found a good use and took out like half the ghouls in one throw, then shooting my way through the rest of them. Before too long I'm at the second gunner, and more notes, yay. After that was done, I continued my rampage east to a little radio tower with another gunner. Then out of him pops an army of festering bloatflies, and they were taking quite a few shots to take down, and I thought I was pretty dead. However, they have aim that would make stormtroopers blush. I would just sit still and take pot shot after pot shot until they all finally went down, avoiding every single attack. So now comes the hardest part of the mission, the boss fight. Creation Club bosses are never scaled properly, and once I read the note I had to deal with Coroni, but he decided to run away and kill a Deathclaw instead that I saw later after the fight. I had to slowly crawl my way to him since he booked it, and once he saw me I had to fight for my life. So my plan was to fire off a mini nuke, and surprisingly it only took off half of his health, and his Tesla cannon can 2 to 3 shot me. Yeah, I die here quite a bit. Eventually I was able to get a winning strategy. Launched a nuke at him, should have banked a critical for this to be honest, hide behind cover and fire at him. The Tesla cannon has splash damage, so I'm in trouble, so the hiding part doesn't work out quite as well. I spammed every drug and buff I got, then took pot shots at his head, and it became a long drawn out stalemate, and I burned through pretty much all my healing supplies really quickly. Eventually Coroni was down to a sliver of health. I was out of stim packs and I had to trust in the force. And with one shot from death, I was able to land a headshot and Coroni fell, and I could claim the Tesla cannon for myself. Totally won't bite me in the butt here in a little bit. So with that all done, I was next to death and I had nothing to me, so I had to stop by Diamond City again to resupply and heal my rats. Here I wanted to be cheeky and blast Kyle, but the splash damage alerted the entire town and I ended up dying. But again, I was also blasting myself with the splash damage, so I let Kyle lose his head. Once I had some supplies and back to a decent spot, I thought I'd have a go at Swan. The weapon is strong, sure, and it hits pretty often, so I could have been able to take down Swan in normal circumstances. However, I have movement issues, so Swan will be able to catch up to me really quickly and gave me the giant treatment. I'll come back once I have more perks under my belt. So in my search for prep work, I decided to return to the police station. You would think I should clear Park Street Station since I'm in the area, but you see, my brain is a perfectly polished sphere, so don't question me. Things got very chaotic on my way to Arcjet. Seems that me getting the Tesla cannon has earned the interest from the Enclave, so I was ambushed and died almost immediately. These guys are monsters and I would die pretty often here in this encounter. So the ambush death squad will ambush you from behind, so the attempt I was able to live, I had my back turned to Dan so the Enclave would spawn right next to him, so he can have the aggro from the Hellfire Soldier. I blasted him until he went down, since he had the flamethrower that was causing me a lot of hell. The rest went down with relative ease, and if I was using power armor I would have used the best armor in the game, but I can't. Oh well. So the rest of the trip to Arcjet was of little interest. Dan's killed everything ahead of me, same held true for Arcjet. I was so slow so Dan's would aggro and wipe out the entire room before I could say Poyo. Nothing much happened in Arcjet until I came across all I could describe was hell. It wasn't some uber powerful synth, it was hacking a computer. Blind. I had to press up and down on the keyboard until I somehow found a keyword and pray that it worked. And eventually it did. At this point I wanted some energy cells, so I let the toaster play with his buddies while I went back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS, the best Animal Crossing game, don't at me. Once I fired up the Heavenly Light to purge the Cinderbots, I went in and picked up every item I can, and I ended up with over 1500 fusion cells, enough to see me for the rest of the run, and then some. Dan's went ahead and cleared out the facility for me and mission complete. I get a lot of experience for being a tag-along, and at this point I'm uncertain if I will go with the Railroad or the Brotherhood at this point, so good to have this on the back burner. Once that was done, I went down the road a bit to Fort Hagen. On my way there, I roasted a Yao Guai alive. Otherwise, not much happened and I got my fast travel destination. At this point I returned to Sanctuary and upgraded the receiver to Wave Oscillator. Well, I could go for Overkill for mods. They require Science level 3 and I don't think I'll get past level 22 for the run. With an upgrade to my firepower, I entered Park Street Station. So for the Triggermen, I was very trigger happy and I can finally put my Tesla cannon to good use. And much like Teslas in real life, they do pack a very explosive punch. I love using the power of an alien thunder god, and this weapon is super powerful, just I'm pretty slow getting to places. As for the inside of the vault, I am sadly in close quarters, and this is where the gun struggles with. It has splash damage and it can damage the user, nowhere close to the risk of the piggy bank had, but I do need to play it safe. And while I'm here, I should mention the Tesla cannon has no reload animation, meaning you can spam it infinitely. So nothing really happened as I crawled my way through the vault. My build is starting to stabilize at this point, just takes a while getting through the place. About 40 minutes total, which is still far faster than any Skyrim dungeon. I smited Dino from afar, then rescued Valentine. Then began the escape sequence, which really isn't much of one, just Nick becoming the main character outrunning his companion. Maybe this is payback for all the escort quests I leave the escort behind or something. As for Skinny Malone, I instilled the power of 69 million gigawatts of pain and the resulting blast was enough to wipe out the entire crew in one shot. Mission complete, so we left the vault and to get a lot of experience from the quest, and we returned to Diamond City to become one with the chair, then began snooping around the cereal factory. But I had to talk to the mayor and secretary for keys to the house. They weren't being nice, so I guess I'm back to rolling a 44% to get a key so I can continue to be a Scrooge and keep my money in check. Back at Kellogg's house, I take everything that isn't nailed down, talk to Dogmeat, then warp to Fort Hagen. Inside the fort, unlike the last run, things weren't really too bad. I mean, this place is hard to navigate thanks to my splash damage, but not insta-kills on me. Dogmeat made things annoying as usual, as he would not go away at all, but nothing is new. The synths weren't really much of a threat. For my small size and refractor perk, they do take more pain than other enemies, requiring 2 shots instead of 1 because energy resistance, but oh well. As for the basement, nothing of note really happened, but the energy bubblehead will help things out quite a bit, just frying a lot of electronics along the way. As for Kellogg, well, my weapon is overpowered. Time to make this Rice Krispie treat snap, crackle, and pop from a blast of electricity. With every robot circuits fried, I grabbed my brain matter chip, blind menued again, then left to see the Pridwin move in. I reminded them that it is dangerous to fly a blimp during a thunderstorm, then returned to Diamond City to get the story on the road. So after conversing with the gang, I returned to Good Neighbor and began the memory den. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it took 15 minutes. What is normally a slog is even more so today. During my trip down memory lane, I was reminded of when I wasn't quite small enough for a brief bit. I get the needed info, talk to Amari, and now I can begin the glowing sea once again. So, since I already made it halfway across the glowing sea getting my OP weapon, the trip to Virgil's cave really wasn't that long today, besides reminding the bugs that flying types are weak to electric types. Otherwise, the only other creature I came across during my adventure was a Deathclaw outside Virgil's cave. I had the high ground, and the gecko had no chance. After that was done, I talked to Virgil, who is very suspicious of the man the size of a toenail with a portable thunderstorm. I too would suspect this is Institute witchcraft. So next up on this pain train is Green Tech. The journey wasn't really that tough, just more time consuming today. Besides trying to shoot at Ann and avoiding all their attacks, there really weren't much to write home about. I thought I was going to hit a run-ending scenario with a slope, since it would not let me up, but all it took was reminding the game that it is brothers with Skyrim and it lets me up. I was able to get the jump on the gunner with a missile launcher and they never brought out the big guns. The rest of the building wasn't all too bad. I was a little paranoid going across the floorboards. Next room I just pointed and clicked and all the gunners were struck down with ease. So for the courser, I really wasn't paying attention to the courser at all and I just started blasting in a general direction. Once I realized where the courser was, I zapped him dead and claimed his loot. I also blasted the synth because I'm such a nice guy. Once my business inside Green Tech was done, I had the high ground and a weapon with no fall off, so I decided to have some fun. First I blasted repeatedly into the pit where the high level ghouls are for a lot of experience, then I blasted down at the raiders from below. I don't even think they knew what was happening. This must be what Thor feels like in the thunderstorm. So after this was done I left for Good Neighbor to pay the railroad a visit. On my way to the North Church I did have some fun with some mongrels and raiders, zapping them to death. After that was done, I remade it into the church, where I put the Wrath of God into the ghouls. Once things were all cleared out, I typed in the totally secure password into the railroad's wall. They need better security. So, against my instinct, I don't start blasting at them, since I have a feeling I would need to work with the railroad in order to actually beat the run. I let Tom decode the chip, watch Desmona walk away from me, really tempting to press left mouse button, talk to the sky, then get my mission from Deacon. So I was kinda wanting to avoid the railroad this time since their questline is basically the Institute questline with a few extra steps in there, and I did the Institute last time, so I returned to the Cambridge police station to talk to Dan to take me up to the Pridwin so I can finally do the Brotherhood's questline after done and dashing them for the last several runs. But that will come back to backfire here in a little bit. I get up on the vertibird, get a very poor view of the Commonwealth, and arrive at the blimp. So here on the blimp, I heavily confused the Brotherhood members here by my stature, but then again you need to remember that ants can lift 50 times their weight. I talk to the irritating elder, then begin my tour of the ship. So, funny thing, I cannot progress the Brotherhood's questline, and the reason is extremely stupid. I straight up cannot talk to Tegan. I can initiate dialogue, but I can't do any of the dialogue branches, since if I were to grow up I would definitely fail the challenge, so I guess we are taking the rails. In my frustration, I went to the racetrack and bet all my money on the ant with the portable atomizer. Since I'm going to have to be siding with the railroad, guess time to get their questline started. I began by heading south from the diner, then talking to Deacon. We slowly crawled our way across the bridge until we got to Ricky, then began crawling through the sewers. The synths inside here were of the easy variety and went down with little fuss. The big fuss was since I'm an ant, I have to swim through the puddles, so that was fun. Also no Aqua Boy perk because I like pain. The rest of the sewer crawl really wasn't much to write home about. I laid down the zappies, crawled through a tunnel, and came across another terminal I was able to blind hack it. Throughout the excursion, Deacon was by my side, quite literally, and it was pretty annoying. But then again, when your backup has a portable Death Star beam, I too would let him do all the shooting. Eventually we grabbed the prototype, mission complete, and then we left. Before returning to the railroad, my small brain finally remembered that Virgil exists, so I talked to him, get some schematics on the back of a napkin, then returned to the railroad to begin working on building a teleporter. Thankfully, my scavenging goes well, and I have enough parts to get into the Institute. After that was done, I built it and warped in. Inside the first room, I had to blindly insert the scanner and do that menu until I got the info I needed to proceed further. Well, I descended down the elevator, get a very confused Robo-Sean wondering why a toy proclaims he is his father, then talked to the regular father to get Institute stuff started. I did the meet and greet of the faculty, then talked to Liam and his synth friend to get the ball rolling on the railroad prerequisites. Once that was all done, I talked to Desdemona about our little game plan, then typed stuff on a terminal blindly, and get info to go to Polyamor Lab. I really hate this place casually, even more so today. I thought I could be cheeky and kill Molly before going through the science part so I don't get locked in, but she cloned herself so I have to do overtime anyways. Meh. Well, at this point I just fired on the ghouls, but I kept blasting myself really close and I was taken to the pearly gates. Second go around I played things from afar and cleared out the room. I went around grabbing test tubes and got my password from the terminal. Had a hell of a time trying to navigate. Eventually I opened the reactor room, blasted the glow stick and got my radioactive isotope, then I had to blind guess which elements to use. Eventually, after throwing enough science at the wall, I found a combination that stuck, and I was allowed to leave. I followed Molly up to the director's office, fired his arse, and I was only given $25 for all my effort and unpaid overtime, and get laid off immediately. I blasted Molly and get a level up. I hated this place, even more so as an aunt. Next up, I gave Liam the password, and the final part before it becomes the Institute ending is blasting at some guards. They were all bunched up in one big ball, and I had splash damage. Their circuit boards were all fried to hell and back. I gave the agents the good news, and the new objective is to play the Institute ending until towards the end. I talked to Father and began Libertalia. So I hate X6. He wants to keep a close eye on me. By close, I mean trying to run right into me and be right next to me. Personal space, man. It was nighttime so I could blast things from the shadows. Well, it is hard to miss an ant-to-man lightning. It was a slow jog, and I was always on edge of my travels because of X6 getting pushed into the water, because if I do get pushed in, I might as well be drowned. I was worried for the most part about the raider with a fat man on the ship, but I was able to sneak strike him, somehow. That headache was done. So I could not take the shortcut up the wires to Libertalia, so I had to cross the planks a slower way. Just meant more time for raider slaughter. There was a small boardwalk that was supposed to be a tightrope walk casually, but thanks to my stature is more just a normal sized bridge. During the crossing, a board decided to set itself to vibrate. Eventually I was able to make it to the elevator up to the ship, and since I already smited the raiders from afar, it was a quick and uneventful trip to the top, where I factory reset Gabriel, then Zeus's buddies to the afterlife. Back inside the Institute I get my next mission for the Battle of Bunker Hill. However, I have other plans in mind. I talked to Desdemona about the upcoming battle, and she says to kill the Institute and protect the runaways. Heading to the Courser, I wandered into the wrong neighborhood and proceeded to smite some super mutants and raiders. As for the Courser, from my last run, I remember having to use a truck to get across the gap, so you would think the run would probably end here. But you see, you can just kill the Courser right as you meet him, so I offed his head. Father really isn't best pleased that the battle had a 99% probability of succeeding and had the 1% chance of failing. However, this is me we're talking about. That 1% is actually a 45% chance. I get away with my actions and can continue being undercover. Before returning underground, I reminded the local raiders who was in charge. Back at the Institute, I attended a meeting, have to get out of my chair to talk to Father, then get the news that he is going to sadly die, and places the Institute in my charge. I'm pretty sure any detractors could just step on me and be done with it. Just have to avoid my smiter. I get the game plan and take the teleporter to mass fusion. You know, Brotherhood, this could have all been avoided if you didn't cage up Tegan. Once I made it up on the roof, I just started to blast at the poor Brotherhood soldiers. They do have really good energy resistance, especially the ones in power armor, which isn't ideal, but have more than enough ammo to destroy every faction. Another terminal, but thankfully it was an easy menu without visuals. I tried to do the elevator skip, but I'm too vertically and more importantly horizontally challenged to make it across the gap to Good Neighbor. Well, I take the slow elevator ride down, shooting down the dumb knights like a shooting gallery game. Eventually they blew out the elevators, so we had to crawl around a bit to find the switch to turn the juice back on. Things weren't really that interesting heading on into the basement. I crawled around in the radioactive muck in a hazmat suit, which I'm very glad they gave you one, otherwise I'd come out with an additional ant on me. Wasn't dangerous all things considered, just very time consuming. What was dangerous, however, was coming out of the room. Seems the sentry bot spawned as a legendary variant, and it got way too close for comfort and I continued to be my own worst enemy. Second go I didn't learn anything, but this time I was able to live. Mostly. The Assaultrons went down much easier thanks to not having 2 health pools to sit through. With enough lightning strikes I was able to come out on top. As for escaping the dungeon, we were visited by a bunch of Brotherhood Knights, but since I'm out for blood, I decided to zap indiscriminately at friend or foe alike until everyone in the room was dead. This is the result of having unlimited power at your fingertips. Or boredom. Once that was done, I finally remembered about Swan. And after that I had fun with a vertibird. Too bad both failed to acknowledge that flying types are weak to electric types still. With that all done, now comes the slow part of the Institute, mostly some junk missions until the finale. First Father talks to me about Wallace, which I did after wasting the local Mr. Handies. Then the Gunners. Despite my weakness to grenades, they weren't too bad all things considered. Inside the burnt down house, I failed to convince Wallace, so that's the power teleportation for you to make up for my shortcomings. And illegal kidnappings. Next mission had me spread fear and propaganda through a microphone, then fiddle around with electronics in Diamond City and powering up a reactor. Then having to talk to the council about the future. When that was all done, I got news that the railroad was under attack, so endgame time. I returned to the railroad and it was under attack. Thankfully everyone comes in from the back entrance, so I positioned myself just right and zapped at the Brotherhood Knights as they came in. Got results with ease. As we continued to escape the church, Glory died on us and that was the first time we really talked. Which is really sad, but I guess the railroad continues to get the short end of the stick on everything. Anyways, the rest of the sewers went well enough. Miniguns were of non-issue because my short statue, I could just dodge all their bullets except for 1 or 2 and take like a minuscule amount of damage. Back at the top, I cleared out the rest of the soldiers, and when I talked to Des about getting revenge, I accidentally zapped the entire leadership and killed them all. Sorry, force of habit. Upon reload, I re-killed all the soldiers and then didn't zap the railroad into the next life. Then begins the endgame rush for them. We returned to the police station and cleared out the horde of Brotherhood Knights here. You know, throughout the run, it is quite shocking how effective this gun is. Inside the police station, it was more voltage until the Knights were all cleared out with relative ease. On the rooftop, there was a bunch of mutants that spawned below the police station, and an incoming vertibird. Thankfully, with my electricity, the vertibird crashed and landed on the mutants. 2 birds, 1 lightning strike. After that, I take my second vertibird up to the Pridwin, and came across a fun little oopsies. When I went to leave the bird, I fell through the crack, to the ground below. Thankfully the water catches me. Reloading and the same thing happens once again. I thought at this point I would have to do the Institute ending, but I remembered there was a spare vertibird at the airport, and I just hoped it was still there. So I went through and killed every Brotherhood soldier here at the airport. One had a skull next to their name, but really it meant nothing in comparison to their skill issues hitting an ant. Before long the ground was cleared out and the vertibird was able to drop me off on the ship. Just one hell of a detour. So for the battle on the Pridwin, I am confident I could take down the entire paramilitary force by myself, and that is what I did. I shot at the people on the outside on the deck, and then I entered the interior. A lot of scribes and some named members came out of the upstairs, but I just made things for easy pickings. Inside the main portion, I blasted any soldier that looked at me. They were all lined up down a long hallway, and I Zeused them from this life into the next. The rest of the ship wasn't quite as exciting. Once everyone was dead, I just crawled around the upstairs planning charges at my very slow pace. Thankfully they have remote detonation, so I don't have to worry about the escape portion. When I came downstairs, Maximus guards immediately opened fire at me, so I repaid the favor. You see, I can dodge spread fire like it is nothing, so a few zaps and everyone goes down with ease. I escaped the ship, and everyone was panicking at the cover fire. Sorry to break it to Deacon and Tom, but everyone's dead. So at this point, all that is left is the nuclear option for the railroad. One big final battle. That is one long dungeon crawl, and I'm really not in the mood right now. So I guess it's time for the secret way to finish the run. I returned to the railroad HQ, and blasted at Desmond and everyone else here. I had to restore the balance of the universe after all. Once that was all done, I returned to Father, and he told me I missed someone. Seems Tom was out getting groceries. When I came back to the railroad, I found him standing there, so I let loose one final blast of voltage. I returned to Father, watch him die, crash the game once again, and prove that you can sort of beat Fallout 4 as an ant. Also, can we get an F in the chat? Well, that was surprisingly nowhere near as painful as I was expecting. Sure, it did take a long time to beat, but that was mostly just the walking speed. I can fast travel everywhere, so that made things less annoying than the over-encumbered run. and it was way simpler than Skyrim as an ant also. The world of Fallout 4 is much smaller, and way more importantly, my attacks didn't clip into the floorboards, making half my attacks whiff. The easy part of the run, besides the Tesla cannon being absolutely overpowered like Creation Club content is in general, was actually my size. Skyrim is all about hit scan, so aim in a general direction and you hit something. Fallout 4, I was able to dodge most bullets, especially spread weapons, easily, and the only thing that I really had to consider was melee damage and explosions, since they were basically the only things that could actually hit me. Just, the movement speed was a slog and what slowed the run down to a crawl. And with the run all done, I just want to say thank you all for 1,000 subscribers. I'm just glad to have a nice community and giving me something to look forward to. With how dark everything is these days, I really enjoy making the runs for you all, even if it costs me what little sanity I have left. A year ago, if you told me I would pass 1,000 subscribers really quickly, I would have laughed. I started doing challenge runs after being inspired by Nurbit's runs and also Mitten Squad's. May his wonderful soul rest in peace. Well, here's to more wacky ways to suffer in open world games. Well, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to give a like if you did and subscribe for more masochism. Any other ways I could torture myself, leave it down in the comments below. This has been Orpheolus, and see you all next time.